I'm back.
How's it going, beautiful people of YouTube? I am back and I have no introduction planned. At all. In any way. No, I'm being serious. I don't know what I'm doing now. This is going to be the chapter 13 of Demon of Decay's The Asylum, and I hope that you enjoy. It has been a long time since I've last done this, so yeah. Wish me luck. Demon of Decay's The Asylum, chapter 13. Twilight stared upwards as she lay curled up on the cool bathroom tiles. Her tail clutched tightly against her chest like a foal with a blanket. She ran her tongue over her dry lips before speaking.
Princess Celestia? Are you there?
Her whisper was lost beneath the mechanical hum of the air conditioner. Ears held erect, she waited quietly. There wasn't any response.
Did I just imagine it? Is the stress getting to me?
Dread began to spread its way through her as she tried to keep her thoughts rational and focused. After working some moisture into her desiccated mouth, she repeated the question, louder, ignoring the desperation in her voice. There was a faint pop from the air vent.
Twilight, my most faithful student.
The rest of Princess Celestia's words were lost beneath a muffled howl of joy. Twilight's hooves clasped to her lips as she squealed with relief.
The princess! It's her! It's really her!
Even knowing that Applejack was right outside, it didn't keep the unicorn from laughing giddily. Her face split into a broad grin.
Princess, I'm here.
Twilight hissed loudly, wiping away the tears from her eyes.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, Twilight, I can hear you. Twilight's heart leapt at the sound of Celestia's voice. She sounded distant and metallic, as if speaking through a drain pipe, but it was clearly her. Even the odd pauses and fluctuations didn't mask the strength and compassion within every syllable.
It is good. Hear your voice again.
Oh, Princess, I've been so scared.
You have to help me. I've been trapped in this hospital where everyone thinks I'm insane. All my friends are here too, and they're different and wrong. And nothing makes sense and... Wait. Where are you?
She glanced around the bathroom.
I can hear your voice, but I can't see.
Twilight, please. Princess Celestia's tone was firm, halting Twilight mid-sentence.
I don't have much time, and I have much to tell you.
She nodded obediently, the hair on her neck standing on end at the princess's tone.
What? What is it? What do you need to tell me? Twilight. Equestria is in danger, and...
The princess's voice warped and faded before going quiet with a faint pop. For a soul-rendering moment, Twilight feared she was alone once again. There were a few snaps before Princess Celestia's voice cut back in, like a damaged radio trying to find a signal.
Lost. I don't know how long we have, so... must listen carefully. I'm listening, Princess Celestia. What is it? What do I need to do?
It sounded like the princess was speaking from somewhere just above her head, but as Twilight looked around, she saw nothing. She opened her mouth to ask the question, but quickly snapped it shut again, her curiosity held in check by her sense of duty. Celestia's response was an indecipherable mixture of whispers with unknown noises layered over them, only the odd syllable coming through clearly.
Princess, I can barely hear you. Can you repeat that? What's going on?
Another series of small pops sounded before the princess's voice cut back in.
Energy to keep this spell running, no matter what.
She was addressing someone else that Twilight couldn't hear. Whatever their response was, it was lost beneath more distortions.
There, hold that. Twilight, can you still hear me? Is that better? Yes, Princess, it's much clearer now. Excellent.
The princess's relief was palpable, despite the unidentifiable interference that continued to warp her voice.
I cannot speak for long. The spell is difficult to manage and we may lose our connection at any moment. What you need to know is that Equestria is in great danger. Danger?
Twilight repeated, her voice grim and serious.
What kind of danger? A grave and terrible one. Yesterday something happened in Ponyville. The how and why have eluded us thus far. What we do know is that something foul has been released, something made of darkness and shadow.
Her words hit Twilight like a bucket of ice water.
What did you say?
She whispered, her legs trembling like a newborn's. She glanced at the nearest mirror, swallowing her fear.
Darkness and shadow? Yes, Twilight, and we don't know what it is or where it comes from. There is no record of anything like this. It moves as if alive, yet is insubstantial and formless. It is a shadow that can defy the noon sunlight. It is consuming everything in its path, covering all it touches with a darkness that resists any attempt to banish it. Ponies that are taken by the shadow become changed, twisted reflections of themselves.
Princess? Twilight began, trying and failing to keep her voice steady as thoughts of dangerous smiles and warped faces passed through her mind.
This shadow. What happened to Ponyville? What about my friends?
Princess Celestia sighed, the sadness in her voice squeezing Twilight's chest tight with fear.
I'm sorry, Twilight. Every pony in Ponyville has been taken. Yourself included.
Twilight gasped.
Wait, what? What do you mean taken? I'm right here.
She didn't know why she felt suddenly angry, but Twilight found herself glaring upwards towards the ceiling.
I'm not taken. I'm right here. You're using some sort of spell to talk to me. How can I be taken? Twilight, control yourself.
The unicorn flinched, her ears flattening against her skull as she imagined the look of disapproval on her mentor's face.
I'm sorry, Princess. I didn't mean to snap at you like that.
Celestia's tone softened with Twilight's apology, but the stress she was carrying didn't vanish.
I'm not mad, Twilight, but this is no time to lose control of your emotions. We don't have long. I don't know when I will have another chance. My sister and I have managed to hold the shadows at bay around Canterlot, but we are losing. Every day, the shadow moves inches closer. And once it has taken root, it does not relinquish its grasp. If I have been taken,
Twilight spat, the words leaving an oily residue on her tongue.
Then how can I help you? How can we even be talking right now? The shadow does not kill ponies. It controls them. Or it controls their bodies as far as we can tell.
Twilight's tail tucked in against her flank nervously at the uncertainty in Celestia's voice.
Does that mean that right now my body is being controlled by some sort of shadow creature? No, Twilight.
Her head dipped in relief as Celestia continued.
The shadow has you, but you are not its puppet. Your mind still resists, which makes you a threat. In its hubris, it returned you to your body in an attempt to break you with fear and confusion. It was a mistake. I received a letter from Spike alerting me to the danger.
Twilight didn't know when she had started pacing, but his name brought her to a halt.
Spike? Is he okay? I am unsure, Twilight. It is almost impossible to locate a single mind within the darkness. I was only able to locate yours because you hold on to your independence. As long as you fight back, it doesn't control the elements of harmony. If it is so powerful, then why does it need to control the elements?
There was a loud pop.
Because they are the only thing that can challenge it. My sister and I can delay the shadow, but that is all. Each day, it moves a few inches closer to the city. It might take months, but without the elements, we will lose. But my friends have already been taken. I need them to use the elements. How can I help you without them?
She asked, her voice growing louder with desperation.
You must then break free. Their minds are beset by disharmony and inner anguish. You must help give them peace.
Celestia's voice began to fade again, growing muffled and distorted at random.
I can faintly sense them through you, trapped within the shadow world. As long as they given into the darkness's lies, they are puppets. Bring them harmony, and you can break the lies. But how? Twilight shouted. A soft series of pops and wobbling noises filled the air before fading into silence. Twilight's mouth flapped open a few times, a chill filling her veins as her mentor's voice dwindled away. Princess? The spell fading. You must be strong. The sake of your friends and Equestria. Princess, please. Please don't leave me, she whispered, glancing around desperately. Remember, Princess Celestia said, her voice as soft as the rustling of leaves in a summer breeze. Friendship is magic. There was a final pop, and then silence. Twilight sat down heavily. Alone? I'm all alone again. Her lip trembled as she took a few deep, ragged breaths. She wiped her eyes, her hoof coming away damp. I'm trapped alone, in some waking nightmare, and even the princesses can't stop it. My friends are being controlled. I can't use magic, and all I want to do right now is have someone tell me everything is going to be alright. Twilight? Applejack's voice was like a peal of thunder in the stillness of the night, the sudden noise driving the unicorn to leap to her hooves and stare in momentary horror at the doctor. Applejack, you, surprised me, she stammered, her heart beating out a rapid. She attempted to smile as she wiped her eyes clear again. I was just finishing up. Standing in the open doorway, Applejack wore a look of concern as she watched Twilight make her way towards the sinks. Twilight? Were you talking to someone? Twilight flinched. Why would you think that? She asked, keeping her eyes focused upon her hooves as she lathered them up with a little bit too much soap. I'm not stupid, Twilight. I could hear you talking from the other side of the door. Twilight continued to wash her hooves. I was talking to myself. She could feel Applejack's eyes on the back of her head. Just talking to yourself? Twilight nodded. Talking about what? Her voice trailed off as she leaned forward and rested her hooves in the porcelain sink. She didn't want to lie to Applejack again. She couldn't do it, but she couldn't tell the truth either. Twilight ignored the lukewarm water cascading down her arms as she closed her eyes, choking back her tears. All she wanted was someone to talk to, someone she could share her problems with. She missed Spike. She missed Princess Celestia. She missed her family. She missed her friends. She missed her life. Twilight, you can talk to me, Applejack said as she moved to Twilight's side, resting a hoof on the unicorn's trembling back. No pony's gonna be upset, and you're not gonna get in trouble. I'm your doctor, but I'm also your friend, and you need to trust your friends. Friendship is magic. Twilight lifted her head to stare at herself in the mirror. She sniffled, her eyes slightly puffy and red. Slowly, she turned to look at Applejack. The doctor's, her friend's, soft green eyes filled with the honesty and concern she remembered. Twilight felt like she was about to burst, keeping it all inside. She had to lie to her friend again, when all she wanted to do was tell the truth. Applejack, Applejack gasped as Twilight spun around, throwing her forelegs around her and burying her muzzle against her shoulder. I'm so scared. I'm alone and scared, and no pony trusts me, and they all think I'm crazy, and I keep hurting my friends. I just want to go home. Twilight cried, her body shaking with each sobbing moan. She didn't care that she was crying like a foal. She didn't care that she was acting like the emotionally unbalanced patient they believed her to be.
She didn't care that she wasn't supposed to tell any pony the truth. When she felt Applejack wrap her arms around her, all she cared about was her friend's embrace. "Hush now, Twilight, it's okay," Applejack cooed softly, rubbing her hoof up and down Twilight's back as she soaked her shoulder in tears. "It's okay. You're not alone. It's gonna be alright." Time lost all meaning for Twilight. Fear, anger, guilt, loneliness, everything escaped her at once in a torrent of raw emotion. She couldn't think, she couldn't speak. Holding on to Applejack like a life preserver, she gave in and cried. When Twilight finally lifted her head from Applejack's shoulders, she felt like she had been wrung out by some cruel god. "Feeling better, Sugar Cube?" Applejack asked with a soft smile. Twilight took a step back, sniffling as she tried to steady her breathing. Her nose was runny, her eyes burned, her throat was raw, her mind a vortex of confusion and anxiety. Yes," Twilight admitted hoarsely, giving Applejack a weak grin in return. I'm sorry for..." "You don't have anything to apologize for," Applejack said, as she produced a handkerchief and set about gently cleaning Twilight's face. "You shouldn't ever feel guilty or upset about what you're feeling. There are times when you just need to let it all out, but you don't need to hide in the bathroom. If you feel like you need some privacy or you're just about to cry, just ask me or one of the orderlies. You don't have to pretend to need to use the toilet. Honesty is the best policy." Blinking as Applejack cleaned around her eyes, Twilight eventually nodded. "Oh, right, I was just, too embarrassed to tell you how upset I was," Twilight lied, the roughness of her throat helping to mask the momentary confusion. As much as it pained her, she couldn't let any pony know the truth. "Better for them to think of me as proud and emotional rather than hearing the princess in my head," she added to herself, her thoughts calming down. Once Applejack was done fussing over her like a mother, Twilight picked up a few paper towels from the dispenser and repaid the favour, doing her best to dry the large damp spot on Applejack's shoulder. By the time the two of them were cleaned up and presentable, Twilight felt like she was walking on clouds. "That's enough feeling sad and vulnerable. Now, it's time to stay strong," she told herself firmly, a proud smile on her face as she embraced the warm sense of purpose suffusing her limbs. "Princess Celestia, no, every pony is counting on me. I'm their only hope." Her grin slipped. "Every pony is counting on me. Every pony is counting on me." Before she could start hyperventilating, Applejack gently squeezed Twilight's shoulder again. "Are you feeling ready to head off to class now?" she asked, her touch and soft words soothing Twilight's anxieties. Twilight looked over in the mirror one last time. She really did look like a patient. With her ink-stained forelegs, wrinkled vest, and a canvas-wrapped suppressor weighing upon her horn, she even felt like a patient. She examined her reflection, her distress clearly etched on her face. Twilight sighed as she glanced away. She retrieved Smarty Pants from the counter. Placing the doll up onto her back, she turned to face Applejack. "Yes, I'm ready," she stated, making sure her voice was strong and steady. The others were counting on her, and she would not let them down. Lunch had been a blessing for Twilight. After meeting up with Pinkie Pie again, the trio had taken their customary seat in the cafeteria to enjoy a fantastically adequate salad. The lack of food-related drama had helped her to focus on processing everything that she had gone through that morning. Busy organising and updating her mental checklists, Twilight had nodded absently while Pinkie Pie had recounted her day to the group. After her tearful outburst with Applejack, Twilight had found her thoughts moving much more smoothly, the faint haze that normally gummed up her mind having receded into the shadows. The emotional storm had passed, leaving the sea of her mind calm. In its wake, she was left with only her ever-growing sense of agitated excitement. Thankfully, Applejack had sensed the need to give Twilight some time to herself. She had helped to divert some of Pinky's questions and comments away from the introspective mare. It had given Twilight the opportunity to indulge in what Spike called library time. Stretches of extreme focus where the outside world faded away while she was concentrating on a specific problem. Her mind had been dominated by two lines of thought. The first had been pure, unadulterated happiness. Princess Celestia had contacted her. The princess knew where she was, and she wasn't alone anymore. Someone she loved knew of her real past and her real life. It was almost enough to make Twilight dance gleefully in celebration. Almost. The joy had been tempered by the other, more serious concerns. The truth about her imprisonment had not brought as much relief as she had hoped. The shadows from her nightmare were real, and her own twisted reflection was an avatar of the darkness hoping to drive her into madness and despair. It was powerful enough to threaten all of Equestria. Even the royal sisters were struggling to protect only Canterlot. Every pony needed the elements of harmony to win the fight. Twilight was their last hope. For Twilight, the responsibility inherent in that concept nearly drove her to despair. She was caught in a tug-of-war between the two emotions, alternating between joy and worry, happiness and concern, of which only fed her anxieties. By the time lunch was over, she was left feeling strung out and nursing a headache.
What can I do? If the shadows, this thing, has brought disharmony to my friends, what can I do to help them?
She returned her tray to the cleaning racks and turned to look at Applejack and Pinkie Pie as they conversed. Beyond what she knew about their false memories, there was little to suggest her friends were different than they should be.
So then Dr. Roy had to fly up into the tree to get the kite and the fall down,
Pinkie finished with a loud laugh, earning a reluctant chuckle from Applejack before she reminded Pinkie that it could have turned out much worse for the little filly.
The princess says I have to bring them harmony, but this is nothing like dealing with discord. If I can't tell what the problem is, how can I fix it?
It was an infuriating thought, made all the worse by the knowledge that the princess and all of Equestria needed her help. She was taking a timed test she hadn't even been able to study for. And the consequences were dire.
Think, Twilight. Think!
Applejack gestured for Twilight to join them as they made their way towards the far doors. Her honest, helpful and good-natured mannerisms made it hard to think of her as needing help. She looked like she was dressed like a doctor for Nightmare Night. Where was the disharmony? Where was the inner anguish? Pinkie Pie grinned at Twilight as she walked past her. Twilight returned it with a faint smile of her own, before trotting after them. Like Applejack, there was little to suggest Pinkie Pie was suffering at all. Despite her limp hair and the burns on her left thigh, Pinkie was still a mare of cheerful optimism. There had been the episode the previous day when she had... Twilight stumbled as if struck. Memories of Pinkie Pie's pitiful shift from happy-go-lucky mare to sobbing wreck rushed through her mind.
Why didn't I see it earlier?
She thought as she regained her balance, ignoring the few chuckles at her expense.
My friends aren't suffering under some curse or spell, like with discord. No, it's so much more subtle than that. Ingenious, even. It traps them in a dream. No pony doubts a dream while asleep. They simply accept the past it creates for them. It gives them the memories of a false life, so they act and think just like they would if this place was real. Applejack has the knowledge of a doctor, but she also is troubled with guilt over what she thinks happened to Big Mac and her parents. and Pinkie Pie.
The unicorn's thoughts trailed away as she watched the pink mare from behind, her gaze falling to the old burns on Pinkie's flank. She narrowed her eyes. Instead of her usual pity and confusion, she felt her rage rear up in the back of her mind.
That thing is going to pay for what it has done. This might just be some false world, but to make my friend suffer beneath the memories of whatever it has devised is inexcusable. Celestia, help me, I'm going to destroy it.
Twilight had never felt such hate before. The heat of it searing away the rest of her anxieties. The shadow monster had violated the most fundamental aspect of her friend's sense of self. Their bodies and minds had been warped and defiled. It was torture of the soul. Worse still, her friends couldn't even see the true cause of their pain. Believing their condition to be normal was the most tragic irony of all.
What sort of intelligent being could be so cruel? Discord had been a creature of disharmony, certainly, but he was never truly malevolent. The changeling queen had certainly been willing to abuse ponies to feed her ambitions, but she could never accomplish what Princess Celestia described. King Sombra could have created something like this, but he was destroyed. And even then, his dark touch was detectable if one knew where to look.
Twilight glanced around the white and green halls.
This place feels too real to be a simple spell. It's magic, but the sort that even the princesses haven't experienced before.
Although Applejack and Pinkie Pie attempted to pull Twilight into a conversation, she kept to herself, busy fighting to tamp down her anger. Hating the shadow creature was pointless at best. She couldn't afford any more distractions. She needed emotional control. Refocusing her mind back to her friends and their altered pasts, she unrolled her mental checklist and began going over every detail she could remember, plodding over them with the unfocused obedience of a clockwork pet.
Twilight!
The unicorn halted as she heard her name, Applejack's face swimming into focus just inches away from her own. Twilight blinked and took an involuntary step backwards.
Yes? Are you feeling all right, Sugar Plum?
Applejack asked, giving Twilight a probing look.
You were really distracted there. Are you worried about class? Class?
Twilight blinked again. She glanced up to read a clock on the wall as she called up her schedule that she had memorized. She scowled.
Oh, right. Class. Because I'm still just a foal who needs to go to school.
Applejack frowned.
Now, there's no need to have an attitude about this. Schooling is important for any pony, even when they're as smart as you. Plus, you're really gonna like our teacher, Pinkie Pie added. She's lots of fun, is really nice, and knows a whole bunch.
Twilight bit back her retort.
Emotional control,
she reminded herself, swallowing her sarcasm.
I'm sure I will, Pinkie.
Applejack continued to look at her.
So, are you sure you're feeling alright? You zoned out there pretty good. I'm fine, she said, waving away the doctor's concern. I was just thinking about Rarity.
Which wasn't a lie, strictly speaking. She had been thinking about all her friends. Each of them was out of sync with their true selves. Something in their pasts had made them upset and vulnerable, and she needed to know what. Twilight glanced up at Applejack, adopting an expression of remorse.
I just wish I knew why I got us so upset.
You don't need to worry about that, Applejack reassured her. Like I said earlier, you didn't do anything wrong. Rarity doesn't blame you. Twilight pressed on.
But I don't want to have the same thing happen the next time we meet. It's obvious something happened to her. What?
I told you before it's not my place to be talking about that, and I mean it. Applejack cut her off. You can ask her yourself next time you meet. In fact, it's best if you do, since that way she'll know just how much you care about her. I know you're upset about the whole thing. I can tell you don't like not knowing all the details, but things will work out. I promise.
Yeah! Things always get better if you give them a chance.
Pinkie Pie added with a knowing nod. Realizing she wasn't going to get any answers from either of them, Twilight sighed again.
Patience,
she told herself.
I have to give it time. Oh, don't be sad. I know just what would cheer you up,
said Pinkie Pie with a flourish, gesturing down the hall.
School! You love learning and reading so much. You'll have a great time. I know I do. And all of that goes double for you.
Following where Pinkie was gesturing, Twilight noticed the group of fillies and colts filing past a lavender-coloured mare, her back to the approaching trio. She wasn't dressed like any of the other staff. Her outfit a cheerful shade of yellow. Recognition tugged at Twilight's mind. Something about the mare was annoyingly familiar. A name eluded her. It wasn't until they drew close enough that she could hear their footsteps that she turned around to glance at the trio, revealing her face and her smiling flower cutie mark.
Hello, Dr. Applejack. Pinkie Pie.
Cheerilee greeted them with a warm smile, the identification hanging around her neck, labeling her as Hospital Educator. After returning Pinkie Pie's enthusiastic greeting, her gaze switched to the dumbfounded unicorn.
And you must be Twilight, right?
Twilight nodded.
Pinkie Pie has told me a lot about you.
Oh, responded Twilight flatly, finding it hard to respond. Considering the Shadow World's habit of putting ponies into positions that correlated loosely to something from their real lives, having Cheerilee as a teacher wasn't that large of a leap. Still, going to one of Cheerilee's classes was uncomfortably close to being sent back to magical kindergarten.
It's nice to meet you,
she finished lamely, fighting down a shiver.
So, are you just escorting students to class now?
Cheerilee asked as she turned back to Applejack, leaving the two patients to wait obediently nearby. With as much casualness as she could manage, Twilight leaned over closer to Pinkie Pie.
Please tell me that Cheerilee isn't our teacher,
she whispered beneath her breath, watching a few foals make their way through the open doorway.
Miss Cheerilee?
Pinkie asked before letting out an awkward stifling her laughter with a hoof. Twilight narrowed her eyes as Pinkie Pie struggled to keep from laughing back in her face.
Oh, no, she isn't our teacher, she explained. She just teaches the foals. Oh, and art class. And music sometimes.
Twilight nodded with relief. The last thing she needed was to be stuck in class with foals, constantly reminded of old nightmares, her lost life, and the indignities of her reduced age. Applejack and Cheerilee continued to converse in friendly tones as Twilight examined the hallway. The sounds of laughter and disorganized conversation flowed out of the open doorways nearby. She caught a glimpse of the foals inside as they talked, their desks laid out in neat rows. A few nurses walked down the aisles, guiding errant students back to their seats and helping them to prepare for class. Twilight turned to watch an older group of ponies make their way towards another door across the hall. Like Cheerilee's classroom, there was a bulletin board outside that offered a welcome contrast to the familiar green-white walls. However, instead of paper flowers and crayon drawings, it was decorated in purple bunting and held maps and more educational fare. Twilight pointed a hoof at the other door.
So, is that our class?
Yep, Pinkie Pie said, not taking her eyes off of the crude drawings mounted on a nearby wall. Eventually, she glanced back at Twilight, looking a little crestfallen.
I only got to spend 1 year with Miss Cheerilee before I had to switch to the class with the older foals. I like Miss Luna Moon, and learning about geography and history and multiplication and all, but I kind of miss being able to paint in class. Miss Lula Moon?
Twilight asked, the name itching at the back of her mind. Once again, recognition teased her from just out of reach.
Is that our teacher?
Yep, Pinkie Pie repeated.
She's really smart. Plus, she's a unicorn just like you. So you can ask her all those questions about magic and, Starbird the Swirled?
But I don't want to hear about you getting into any trouble with her again, Applejack added after Cheerilee excused herself, just managing to catch the end of their conversation.
Trouble?
Twilight asked.
Why would I get into any trouble?
Well, Applejack began, trying to find the right words.
Because you sometimes call her a stuck-up fraud and say that you're smarter than her and that she doesn't know what she's talking about,
Pinkie Pie explained happily. Twilight stared back at her, her mouth agape.
I do what? And then there was that one time that you broke all your pencils and threw them at her and then knocked over your desk and...
I think that's enough, Pinky, Applejack interjected with an embarrassed chuckle. Since you don't remember her, think of this as a chance to turn over a new leaf for the both of you. Alright?
Of course,
she said defensively. They might be implanted memories, but she still couldn't help feeling mildly offended at their implications.
I promise I'll be on my best behavior.
I'm glad to hear that, Sugar Plum, Applejack replied, as she led them across the hall. Peeking into the doorway, she gestured at some unseen pony before turning back to them. Pinkie Pie, you go on in and take your seat, alright? We need a moment of privacy. Pinkie bounced happily into the classroom while the other two stood by quietly and waited. Glancing up at the bulletin board, Twilight noticed the words, Miss Luna Moon's Star Pupils, at the top in purple construction paper, surrounded by stars and crescent moons. It was aggravating, not being able to answer the question of where she had heard the name before. Her eyes settled upon a star that looked to be crossed with a magic wand. And it clicked.
Greetings, Dr. Applejack,
Trixie spoke with an actor's grace as she stepped out of the classroom, magically shutting the door behind her. Glancing past the Earth Pony, Trixie's eyes fell upon Twilight.
And good afternoon, Twilight. How are you feeling today?
Good, she forced out, still staring in shock at the blue mare in front of her. Instead of a cloak, she wore a relatively modest outfit, although the large gem clasped at her neck was certainly flashy.
Trixie is a teacher. How can someone that selfish be a teacher?
That's why I wanted to talk to you, Miss Luna Moon, Applejack said, causing Trixie to turn her wary gaze off of Twilight. I know you got a little memo about Twilight, and I wanted to talk to you in person first, just to fill in the rest of the details.
Of course, Doctor, but please, call me Trixie.
There's no need to be so formal, Trixie said, with an overly humble smile, for all the world looking and sounding as if she were on a stage. Twilight balked.
Is this what I have to look forward to? Every pony I know being altered and changed and then thrown back in my face?
She thought, as Applejack quickly educated Trixie about her supposed condition. She eyed the other unicorn suspiciously.
Princess Celestia said the shadow had taken all the ponies outside of Canterlot, so it probably took Trixie too. Does that mean she is suffering like my friends are? But how could she be suffering right now?
The idea that Trixie might be suffering gave Twilight pause, but before she could explore the idea further, her new teacher turned to address her.
Well, Twilight, I'm sorry to hear that you have had some memory problems.
Trixie's voice was sincere enough, if a bit distant.
You are probably one of the smartest students I've ever had, but if you need any extra help, please feel free to ask me or one of the assistants. Hopefully, we can become good friends.
Friends? Repeated Twilight. She stared back at Trixie, waiting for the other shoe to drop. When she realized it was a serious request, Twilight plastered a big grin on her face to mask her hesitation.
Oh, of course. I would really like that. Very much. Excellent,
Trixie announced with a theatrical flourish, gesturing at the door.
So then why don't you say goodbye to Dr. Applejack, and I can take you to your seat, and we can begin class.
Suddenly apprehensive about spending time with Trixie in a position of official power over her, Twilight turned to give Applejack a worried look. She just gave her a reassuring grin and squeezed her shoulder. Go on, you'll be fine without me, I promise. I'll see you for your group session later, so don't worry yourself. Twilight opened her mouth to correct Applejack, annoyed that she would think she was afraid of being left alone. But she caught herself. She was nervous. Ever since Princess Celestia had spoken to her, she had been filled with a strong sense of determination and purpose. She had a goal to achieve, an obstacle to overcome. The sense of confident resolve had given her strength, but it had only suppressed her anxieties.
I am the victim of something no pony has ever faced before. My body has been taken from me, and my mind is imprisoned within some dark and broken landscape.
She met Applejack's gaze.
But my friends, they're a link to the real world. Princess Celestia confirmed my suspicions. They're the secret to defeating this dark evil.
Although she tried to keep her thoughts optimistic and confident, she couldn't suppress her dread at letting Applejack out of her sight. She was adrift on an unknown sea, and she didn't want to let any of her lifelines out of her grasp. Swallowing her unease, Twilight nodded at Applejack.
Okay, I'll see you later.
After another quick round of farewells, Applejack turned and trotted back down the way she had come, leaving Twilight alone with Trixie. Twilight's eyes lingered on her retreating friend, before she turned to the azure mare. Trixie was staring back at her, with an unreadable expression.
Twilight, we need to talk,
she said, her stern tone catching Twilight off guard.
I don't know how much you remember of our previous relationship, but it wasn't a terribly beneficial one, for you or the class. Now, I am not placing blame. We have had our share of problems, and they could disrupt the class. And when I look in your eyes, I can see recognition there.
Twilight remained silent, listening attentively. Trixie sighed.
I don't know how much you remember of me, but I know it's more than Applejack thinks. Still, while losing your memories is never a good thing, I feel this is a chance for us to start fresh.
Reaching out, she squeezed Twilight's shoulder like Applejack had, as if emulating their friendship.
I want to have a good year together, Twilight. So, whatever you may remember of our relationship, I want you to know that this time it can be different.
Silence hung in the air between them for a long moment.
All right,
Twilight agreed with forced cheer, giving Trixie a tight grin.
Let's call this a fresh start, for the both of us.
Trixie's smile was the first fully honest expression she had ever seen the other mare make.
Excellent, she exclaimed, opening up the door behind her with a surge of magic. Then let me escort you to your seat so we can start class.
Sparing a jealous glance at the aura surrounding Trixie's horn, Twilight moved ahead of her new teacher, fighting to keep her face neutral.
Even if Trixie is suffering as well, I can't get distracted by every pony I remember and their own personal situations, she told herself grimly. Striding into the room, she noticed Pinkie Pie sitting against the far wall, an empty desk beside her. I have to focus on my friends. They're the key to defeating this shadow thing. If I can help them, then I can help every pony at once.
Striding past the front of the class, she was sure not to look at any of the other patients and their attending nurses.
My friends are what's important now. Learn what I can, keep from drawing suspicion, and find a way to save them from their nightmare. Everything else is secondary.
Taking her seat, Twilight gave Pinkie Pie a thin smile. Once again, she felt the warmth of her determination filling her heart. She could endure this. She could handle being presented with altered versions of ponies she knew. She could stay strong, stay focused, and stay positive. Even the idea of a mare like Trixie being a teacher wouldn't faze her. Twilight smirked as she let her eyes roam around the classroom, noting the maps and posters and other school paraphernalia. She had bested the mare twice. Getting information out of Trixie would be easy. As Trixie took up her position at the head of the class, Twilight was already crafting a list of questions she wanted answered. History, politics, medicine, she was eager to get as much information as she could from the now friendly teacher. Considering it was supposed to be a secondary school level class, Trixie would have to know something relevant to Twilight's mission. Even if the curriculum was slightly dumbed down for a mixed classroom, she could still find some way to make it benefit her.
Good afternoon, class,
Trixie said as she took an unnecessary bow. The rest of the students loudly returned the greeting. Levitating a piece of chalk, She turned to the blackboard. Today we are going to be starting something new, called Long Division. Twilight groaned as her head slammed onto her desk. Okay, that is Chapter 13. Oh, damn, I can't say this, can I? Chapter 13 of Demon of Decay's The Asylum done. Finished. I thought that went quite well. Although, some of the characters do sound rather similar. I'm not too good with the number of female voices I can do. I'm just trying my best. I was half tempted to make Trixie either like an over the top actor, or make her sound like the Wizard of Oz. Just have her go like, "Who dares disturb the great and powerful Wizard of Oz?" But then it would kind of ruin it over and over again just by hearing her talk. Also, when it said that she was when it said her surname, Lulamoon, I thought, I don't know a Lulamoon. Who could that be? I've absolutely no idea. I thought Luna? Why is Luna in it? But Luna's like one of the two who's protecting Canterlot, surely. But when I checked online to see who it was, I thought, yeah, we're in for a treat. Fantastic. Other news. If you look at my profile picture, you'll notice that it's changed. And that is because yesterday, when I went online, well, let me give you the full story. I've never seen How to Train Your Dragon before, and I watched it for the first time yesterday, and my god, is that a good film. I love that film. I thought it was brilliant, and it left me with like a really nice warm feeling in my heart, and all that kind of soppy stuff. And then I get a message, and this message was from D Fatman, and the message was that he had drawn a picture of me, or drawn a picture of my avatar, who I might actually call Coley now. He literally looks like me. He's kind of got like the same hair shape and stuff now. It's quite scary, which is awesome. I love it. And it was a brilliant gesture. The reason why I bring up How to Train Your Dragon is because the one happy feeling mixed with the other happy feeling kind of left me reeling, and I wish I could do something like that. I wish I could give something back, but I can't draw. I can't do anything like that. I wish that I could. In fact, Inky Pots, who does a confrontation between Pinky and Pinkamena with a song that is from the Jekyll and Hyde musical. I really look up to them, because I could never come out with something as amazing as that. All I can do is talk. And so, yeah, I wish I had the same abilities, basically. And so, it was a brilliant evening, and I wanted to say thank you, because it made my night. And I've never had someone who I don't know do something, just out of kindness, really. Normally I'm the one who does it. But that really did mean a lot. And that avatar is going to be my new avatar. I'm out with the old, and this one is what it's all going to be about now. So the new Coley is going to be that picture. That's what I'm going to associate myself with. And I just want to say, man, that was brilliant. Thank you for that. Other news. 40 subscribers. I got to 40 subscribers, which is fantastic. I can remember like the first day I put out a chapter of Asylum or something. I think it was Asylum. Yeah. And by the evening I had 1 subscriber in a day. And my I didn't expect to get many people following me, because I feel like I've missed the window for it. And it's brilliant. It's brilliant to see new and more new people saying that they like my stuff, or just sort of, you know, wanting to hear that I've got new stuff out when it comes out, and it's a great feeling. And I just want to thank everyone who does it. So a big thank you to all of my subscribers, everyone who views this video, everyone who leaves a comment. Yeah, everyone who leaves a comment. I'm being serious. Like, at the end of a week, when I come onto my channel, that is the thing that I look for, because I love it. I think it's brilliant, really, that people want to chat, and I always try and leave a comment, even if it's not for me. And I just, you know, hope that I'm doing a good job, because I know you all are, and the likes and the views and everything. I think I passed 1,000 views the other day, and I can't believe it. I can't believe it. It's amazing, and I've only got 40 subscribers. So it means a lot, and I wanted to say thank you to everyone. So I've got nothing else to say apart from I'm back. Yeah. So I'll see you in the next video. Not sure what that's going to be, but fingers crossed it's going to be in the next week or 2 weeks, as it normally is. But I'm tearing up my throat doing this. Oh well, I enjoy it. I love it. So thanks to everyone, and I hope that you all stay shiny.